Welcome back, future CMAs. I am so incredibly excited to have you here for this explainer today. We're going to be diving into a topic from Part 1's internal control section. And honestly, this isn't just vital for getting your certification, it is absolutely crucial for your actual everyday career. We are talking about business continuity planning, or BCP. Now, I know. When we internal controls, our brains immediately go straight to, separating duties or maybe slapping physical padlocks on the inventory room door. But what actually happens when a literal hurricane takes out your main data center? Or, say, a massive ransomware attack completely freezes your accounting software right in the middle of month-end close? Total nightmare, right? Well, that is exactly where BCP comes to the rescue. It's a super practical topic, and I promise you, once this clicks in your head, it's going to guarantee you some really quick, easy points on exam day.
So here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with BCP versus disaster recovery. Then we'll cover business impact analysis metrics, move on to alternate processing sites, talk about testing your continuity plan, and wrap it all up with our final exam strategy.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, BCP versus disaster recovery, the classic CMA exam trap. Okay, before we get too deep into the weeds here, I have to warn you about the absolute biggest, most classic trap the examiners use on the multiple choice questions. They absolutely love, and I mean love, testing if you actually know the difference between keeping the overall business running and just fixing broken IT systems. Basically, they're going to try to trick you into confusing business continuity planning with disaster recovery planning. So let's clear that up right now. Think of it like a hospital during a massive, totally unexpected power outage. Disaster recovery planning, or DRP, is super narrow and very short term. It's literally the IT teams sprinting down into the flooded basement, frantically trying to get the backup generators and the servers back online. It's highly technical, and it focuses entirely on restoring that specific IT infrastructure. But business continuity planning, that is your broad, long-term, overarching strategy. BCP is the plan that makes sure the doctors can actually keep treating their patients using, paper charts and flashlights while the power is still out. It covers the whole shebang: the people, the facilities, the communication, and the actual business operations.
So, your golden rule for the exam, and you'll definitely want to remember this, is that DRP is simply a subset of BCP. Whenever you're reading a tricky scenario, just pause and ask yourself what the end goal is. If it's asking how do we keep selling or treating patients and just operating as a business, that's BCP. If it's just asking how do we fix this broken tech, that is DRP. Keep that distinction crystal clear, and you are going to navigate those questions with absolutely no problem.
Moving right along to Section 2, business impact analysis metrics, calculating the cost of downtime.
So, how do we actually build a solid BCP in the real world? Well, it all kicks off with something called a business impact analysis, or a BIA. A BIA evaluates all your different business functions to figure out which ones are the most critical, and then it calculates the actual, literal financial cost of downtime. And during this whole analysis, management has to establish two extremely crucial metrics that you are definitely going to see on your test. The very first one is the recovery time objective, or RTO. This is exactly how long you can afford for a system to be totally down before the company suffers severe, completely irreversible damage. Let's make this concrete. Imagine you're running a massive e-commerce business. Your BIA might determine that your online ordering platform absolutely, positively must be back online within 2 hours of a crash, because if it's not, you're going to start losing major clients to your competitors. In that specific case, your RTO is strictly 2 hours. It is all about the clock ticking down on your downtime.
Now, the second big metric is your recovery point objective, or RPO. While RTO is completely focused on the downtime itself, RPO measures how much data loss you can actually tolerate, which, interestingly enough, is also expressed in time. The easiest way to think about this is simply the age of your data. How much actual work are you willing to just lose forever and have to manually recreate? Are you okay losing a whole day's worth of transactions? Maybe just an hour's worth? Whatever that tolerance level is, that is your RPO.
All right, let's test your understanding right now with a practical scenario, kind of like what you might see on exam day. Imagine your IT department backs up your company data once a night, right on the dot at midnight. But then disaster strikes. Your system suddenly crashes the next day at 11 p.m. But wait, management had previously established a 1-hour RPO. So my question to you is, are you safe? The answer is a massive, resounding absolutely not. Because you only backed up way back at midnight, that crash at 11 p.m. means you literally just lost 23 hours of hard work. If your absolute requirement is a 1-hour RPO, those daily backups fail completely. To meet a standard like that, you'd actually need continuous, real-time data mirroring.
And that scenario perfectly illustrates a really simple rule of thumb that you should always keep in the back of your mind. Shrinking your acceptable downtime or your acceptable data loss will dramatically, and I mean dramatically, increase the cost of your internal controls. Basically, having a super low RTO and RPO means you need much faster, way more sophisticated recovery solutions, and let me tell you, those definitely do not come cheap.
All right, let's pivot to Section 3, alternate processing sites. Where do your employees go?
That whole dynamic about cost perfectly bridges us right into our next major exam topic, alternate processing sites. Think about it for a second. If your main office or your huge data center is completely wiped out by, say, a fire or a flood, where do your employees physically go to keep the business running? Well, BCP identifies 3 distinct types of alternate operational sites, and as a future CMA, you need to have the differences between them totally memorized. So let's break them down, just like I was drawing this out on a whiteboard for you in class. You've got hot, warm, and cold sites, and they vary wildly when it comes to hardware readiness, recovery speed, and, of course, cost. First up, the hot site. This place is fully equipped. We're talking hardware, networking, and current data backups all mirrored in real time. Because literally everything is ready to go, the recovery speed is pretty much immediate, usually just minutes to a few hours. But as you can guess, the cost for a hot site is incredibly high. Next, we have the warm site. This one has all the hardware and the infrastructure already installed, but it is not actively mirroring your live data. You'll still need to bring in and load up your current backups. So the recovery speed here is moderate, usually taking hours to maybe a few days, and the cost sits right in the medium range. And finally, the cold site. Honestly, this is basically just an empty shell of a building. It's got power, HVAC, maybe some plumbing, but absolutely no computer hardware or pre-installed software whatsoever. You literally have to bring everything in yourself. Because of that, recovery speed is painfully slow, taking days or even weeks. But the major upside, the cost is very, very low.
Now, here is a very direct exam strategy tip for you. On the test, pay extremely close attention to the severity of the scenario the examiners are giving you. If a question describes a highly critical system, like, say, a major international bank's wire transfer system, that literally cannot afford even 15 minutes of downtime, there is only one correct answer. You absolutely must choose a hot site. Nothing else is going to meet that immediate RTO requirement. Which brings us to Section 4. Testing your continuity plan. Don't let your manual collect dust.
Okay, so you've established your crucial metrics and you've selected the perfect alternate site. Are you none? Not even close. Internal control standards are very clear on this. A business continuity plan is completely useless, and frankly, it won't even be recognized as a valid control by auditors unless management actually verifies and tests it. Having a beautifully bound 200-page BCP manual just sitting on a shelf collecting dust? Yeah, that is not going to save your company in a real crisis. The CMA exam loves to test you on the escalating levels of plan testing, so let's walk through them really quickly. It starts off super simple with Step 1, a tabletop or walkthrough exercise. This is exactly what it sounds like. Key staff literally sit around a meeting room table and just verbally discuss what they would theoretically do during a hypothetical disaster. Then we escalate to Step 2, the simulation test. This is where teams actually perform a mock disaster drill in real life. But the catch is, they do it without actually shutting down any live operations. And finally, we hit Step 3, the full interruption test. Now, this is the most thorough, but obviously the most risky test you can run. It involves actually pulling the plug and shutting down the main live system to force the backup systems and your alternate sites to take over. It definitely proves the plan works, but trust me, you only do this when you are highly confident in your setup.
And finally, Section 5. Final exam strategy, securing your points. We've covered a ton of really great ground today, so let's quickly transition into our final review phase. I want to firmly lock these concepts in for you so you can walk into that exam room with absolute, unshakable confidence. Here is a rapid-fire checklist of the key takeaways that are practically guaranteed points if you just remember them. First, BCP is what keeps the overall operations moving, while DRP is just the subset that restores the IT infrastructure. Second, RTO is your maximum acceptable downtime, so you're measuring the clock. RPO is your maximum acceptable data loss, meaning you're measuring the age of your data. And finally, for your alternate sites, remember that hot sites are super fast but very expensive, while cold sites are incredibly slow but nice and cheap. Keep crushing those multiple choice questions in your test banks, and always pay very close attention to the specific wording in the exam scenarios. Listen, you are going to absolutely breeze through these internal control questions. I just know it. But right before we officially wrap up, I want to leave you with a quick thought that honestly goes way beyond the exam room and right into your daily career. Think about the organization you are working for right now. If a truly critical disaster struck tomorrow morning, like a massive flood or a devastating cyber attack, would your company's internal controls actually survive the hit? Or is your continuity plan just a dusty manual sitting on a shelf somewhere? Because true business resilience, that is exactly what separates average accountants from the truly strategic financial leaders. Keep that in the back of your mind as you keep studying. You've got this, future CMAs. Keep up the absolutely amazing work, and I will see you right back here in our next explainer.